So, welcome everybody to the ITP stream. This is the in real life portion of the stream. I will be beginning my game at probably about 10:45, if not 11 o'clock, and that's when I'm going to be playing some Dark Souls and doing a speed run. So I'd like to actually begin with the initial purpose of the stream. It is for charity, and there is a legitimate backing to this. ITP, it's kind of funny. Back in 2006, when I was initially diagnosed with this was deemed a very rare condition. And I don't know at what point it went from a rare condition to a fairly common condition. I think a lot more cases started popping up. My personal viewpoint, which I didn't even write for this because I'm not trying to be propaganda and conspiracy theorist. But my parents kept me vaccinated almost my entire life. God bless them for that. They meant well by it, but I'm pretty sure it's the vaccinations that caused mine in particular. Because I was vaccinated up to the gazoo, and all of a sudden I have this blood condition that basically causes my body to act out of whack. You can't convince me otherwise. All right. So the thing is that ITP. I'm about to explain what it is in general, but I have lived with it since I was 14. I will go over more detail in just a second, but the purpose for this stream is to bring awareness to the fact and bring awareness to the condition that does exist for a lot of people, because the thing is that it can go from a fairly moderate pace, it could just be easy bruising and you could easily treat this, and some of them are in acute cases where it just happens in children or adults, less for adults but more for children, for a temporary amount of time, and it just never comes back. You never have to worry about it. And then there's others that are chronic that become severe, and that is the big thing. I've had it chronic up until I discovered that mine was more attributed to food allergies. Again, more detail later. But bringing awareness to this, because it's becoming increasingly common, and people have been experiencing this one a little bit more personally lately, and I think that it's about time. Also, the purple ribbon that I'm showing is also something for cancer patients, so that's gonna be an interesting thing. All right, so I'm gonna read my excerpt real quick. This one I had to write from the heart, so forgive me for anything that may not sound professional per se, but it is sincere and from the heart, so I hope that you guys enjoy this. So, beginning my reading, the best place for me to start is with a general explanation of what ITP is exactly. I'm not going to be able to actually pronounce this. Immune I'm not going to be able to pronounce that. ITP. Do you think you could pronounce it actually? Thrombocytopenic.
Thrombocytopedia purpura.
We'll figure it out. It's a very complex. It's Latin. Okay, it should explain, as it is called. It is a blood disorder characterized by a decrease in the number of platelets in the blood. For those that don't know, platelets are the cells in the blood that help stop bleeding for stuff like bruises, cuts, scrapes, etc. A decrease in platelets can cause easy bruising, bleeding gums, and internal bleeding, just to name a few. And this is caused by an immune reaction, not just any other reaction, like an immune reaction where one against one's own platelets. Basically, white blood cells or the immune system decides one day, for whatever the reason may be, oh, hey, you're a foreign entity, you need to die, and then it's your platelets. It is also a fairly common blood disorder that both children and adults can develop. I didn't put the statistic, I probably should have. For right now, though, it went from, again, a very rare thing where it was less than, 10 cases per 1 million. It increased about 5 times that amount. So for children, it's I believe it was either 66. I believe children was 66 out of 1 million now get it, which again, it was in less than 10, when I first initially got it. So it was a very rare thing. And then adults was again, less than 10. I don't remember what the adult one, but now it is currently 55 in 1 million. So it's definitely increased a lot. Now, that might be for cases that have not answers. Like, people are still trying to figure out what the cause to effect is, but so keep that as you will. Like I mentioned before, there are two types of ITP, acute and chronic. Mine started out as acute initially because people thought it would go away and like, hey, don't worry about it, you probably won't get it again. But eventually I was found out to be a chronic case, like it would reoccur. So acute, in particular, presents more in children after a viral infection, like chickenpox, and only lasts a few weeks, up to 6 months at worst, and with little to no treatment needed. And I know for a fact that mine didn't require too much treatment, and that the at-home remedy was literally having yogurt, which is a probiotic. Chronic, on the other hand, happens across any age, from any time, and can last anywhere from like 6 months to several years, and some even for a lifetime. In my instance, it's been several years. We don't know if it might go away after a certain point. God willing, it won't be a problem. But moving on. So what usually causes ITP? Well, when it starts, the immune system is stimulated to attack your body's platelets, most often a result of antibody protection against said platelets, as I mentioned prior. This can include medications that cause an allergy that cross-reacts with platelets, infections, mostly viral, referred to chickenpox, pregnancy for women, immune disorders like lupus, and low-grade lymphomas and leukemias, so cancer could even cause it. In some cases, the cause is really never known, which is actually, I know that I mentioned immune thrombocytopenic. I know that it was priorly mentioned in there. It's immune, but there used to be the Latin phrase idiopathic, which was literally a translation for we don't know what caused this. So they changed it to immune to kind of like generalize it a little bit more and go from there. But yeah, so even simple stress from everyday life can cause some episodes. More on that when I get back to my own personal story. Lastly, normal platelet count range is usually within 150,000 to 450,000 within the human body per measurement of blood. With ITP, the platelet count can go way less than 100,000, and that's usually when they, diagnose it as ITP. By the time significant bleeding occurs, you may have to have a platelet count of less than 10,000. Oh, we got the ITP, baby! Just say hi to your stream.
It was camera.
Camera's right here.
Hi, she just woke up and she's very groggy.
She just woke up, she's groggy, and she's got the super serious face. Aww. What's that? Are you babbling? She might be babbling. The wife is going to take care of the baby.
She's very quiet.
I don't think that the camera saw her face, but whatever.
Aww.
I'm going to continue.
She's camera shy. So.
She's camera shy. No, she'll probably waddle over our way. Let me see. By the time significant bleeding occurs, you might have a platelet count of less than 10,000. The lower the platelet count, the greater risk of bleeding. Duh. For me, that count dipped as low as 100 or even 0. And I don't mean 100,000, I mean 100 flat. Different symptoms could also occur, like a purple color of the skin that has, after blood is leaked, quote unquote, underneath. Bruises. In my case, severe bruising would be like a pocket of blood. I really don't know how to actually emphasize that better. Imagine, because I have a stress ball like this. This is more or less what my bruise actually looked like. It was literally like a baseball was pushing out from my shoulder, and that is like the severe variant. I can't show the rest of this, but this is my stress ball. I'll mention that later in stream. Tiny red dots, they're called petechiae, usually reside under the skin. Those primarily hit the joint areas like your shoulders, your elbows, your wrists, your hands, your knees, your feet, anywhere where there's like a joint. That's where they commonly occur. Nose bleeds, mouth bleeds, in or around the gums. Heavy periods when it comes to women, blood and vomit and other excrements, which I will not mention, or even cranial bleeding or bleeding in the head. Excuse me. So, as of 2022, this year, There are a lot more treatments available to help combat the effects of this disorder. I was personally diagnosed at age 14, prior mentioned 2006, with a platelet count of 100 flat. No thousands. I was literally 10 times short of 1,000. And treatments at the time were slim to none. And the major treatments of the time were steroids, something called IVIG, or otherwise known as IgG or IVG, etc., different acronyms. It's supposed to be actually, do I? I don't have the container. I had a powder form of it. Immunoglobulin, I believe. And even something as invasive as a splenectomy. Removal of the spleen, which I have yet to even consider. It's still in my body, so we'll keep it that way.
Remained intact.
It's remained intact. It's still mine. I'm not selling it on the black market just yet. In my most recent episodes, the options that have surfaced within those times are quite extensive because I had like a 5-year gap between most of them. As far as medical procedures go, stuff like platelet transfusions, which I'm sure existed beforehand, but when they didn't have the things to manage it, they had to understand it more before doing that. Otherwise, your body would just trash them too. There's a medication called Rituxan, an immune system reboot and restore, essentially. And a lot more. They have a lot more treatments. Like, everything on the table has definitely increased, and everybody now has a better quality of life as a result. Now, about me. So I finished basically the general explanation of everything everybody needs to know. Now it comes... I'm going to oversimplify my story for the sake of time, because if I really had to talk about everything, I'd probably be here for like another hour. But about me personally, my journey with ITP, and I'll call it that, began in 2006, as prior mentioned, with a normal day, playing with my friends, trampoline wrestling, kid stuff. It led to me coming home, getting dressed in my bedroom, and after taking off my shirt, I see like a bruise, like just a random bruise on me, and I'm like, what the heck? I look down, and there's like a dozen bruises on my torso alone. And my body is just covered in them. As I mentioned, there was actually some bruises that looked like literally, if it were physically possible, someone pressing what would be equated to a baseball through my skin. It was just pocket filled with blood. That was severe bruising. A quick trip to the hospital later, and alongside the authorities and doctors grilling my parents, that is not an exaggeration, they had found and diagnosed me with ITP on the spot. Thankfully, my doctor was the one who defended me, and he's like, I think I know what you have. But the authorities and the doctors were all grilling my parents for potential abuse, which was not the case. They are very loving parents and great-grandparents to my daughter, so I shall throw that out there for consideration. My parents and I were informed at the time that the implications were and what it meant for me to be a walking, talking banana at the time. Easy to bruise, for those who don't get the analogy. There was even a possibility of it going away, as mentioned earlier, but years later, it has yet to actually be a solid case after a set amount of time. So, cut ahead, because the second episode didn't really trigger much as far as anything. Like, nothing significant happened other than visiting another doctor. It was about my third or fourth episode in my early 20s. We expanded our options somewhere around that time, and I saw a naturopathic doctor. Great guy. Normally they say go to a hematologist, but every medication that they were offering was like so severe, and some of the things were like, why would I do that? I understand that some people might have to choose some stuff like that if they're willing, but at the time I was still trying to figure this out, trying to figure out what was right for me and all that. So we went to the naturopathic doctor, as mentioned, and he tried something we hadn't looked into before. Some of the symptoms, along with many others that were discovered later by people, were found to be linked to food allergies or just allergies in general. In my particular case, that was called leaky gut syndrome. And for a basic explanation of that is that there is bacteria in your gut that causes your immune system to go out of whack due to some bad tainting of the bacterial antenna, if you'll call it. That's what they use to identify each other. So they wire themselves to be like the platelets, and because they're a foreign entity and they're very similar to platelets, the immune system just can't tell the difference. So leaky gut syndrome was the cause to my effect. through some major dietary changes at the time. Not only did I recover quicker than most other times, like I literally recovered within like a week. Wow. I was even more healthy and vibrant than before, but then I got lazy. More on that another time. But even further, we found that I was low in vitamin D somewhere along the more recent times. And taking supplements alongside the vitamin D helped improve my quality of life for a lot longer. Yeah, no, I thought I was going to add something. Never mind. To date, I have had at least a half a dozen episodes total, about 6 episodes or so, and each time was different than the others. Sometimes it was better than the previous, others it was worse. Like I mentioned before, platelet counts being at literally, no exaggeration, 0. Meaning that they could not find platelets at all. At one point, I got hit with an episode with the, when the unspecified virus of unknown origin hit the country, and my wife became pregnant with my firstborn daughter, Exhibit A over there, and it was basically a very huge stress. It became a very stressful time for us as a family because I was married to her for how long were we married at that point? About
Almost 2 years.
almost 2 years, yeah.
I found out I was pregnant right as the shutdowns were happening, and you were going through that.
But how long have we been married at that point? 2 years?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's all I needed to really know.
Sorry.
It's okay. So it became stressful, 2 years being married, and then, having our first kid, and then the unspecified virus of unknown origin just all of a sudden came out of nowhere, and I'm in the hospital with my condition, and, just trying to get immediate treatment to make sure I don't, die at home. Erstwhile, she's at home, and she can't be with me because of the unspecified virus of unknown origin. And unable to have visitors due to the above-mentioned quote-unquote thing, trying to still surprise my parents with the news of a granddaughter. Yeah, they didn't know at the time either. But after all that, I pulled through with the treatments and managed to make a full recovery and be home with my wife and daughter just as she was born. So now we talk about the personal stress, as I mentioned before. And this, I'm going to quickly give a disclaimer. I don't know who's viewing right now. In fact, how many viewers do I have? 3? I don't know who watching this will actually relate on my level. This is going to be my personal experience of how I managed it. And I understand that this doesn't reflect on everybody. So just hear me out at the very least and just understand this was how I did things and this is what has worked for me. May not work for everybody, but you'll probably see what I mean. Just know I'm not trying to be preachy. I'm just explaining what, my life, what I did basically to manage my thing, my condition, if you will. So, talking about the personal stress. During the time that my daughter was born, I had, this is not even an exaggeration, tremendous amounts of stress in my life. They entered, and there was a whole lot of headaches that persisted, stuff along personal life, work life, everything. As some of you may already know, I'm a Christian by faith. And it was at this time that not only had it been tested, the faith, but it greatly increased as a result, so it wasn't totally a waste. Imagine the Book of Job, if anybody's actually familiar with that. That would actually be the closest thing that I could mention. I had come closer to Christ as a result of the reawakening of my faith, and I'll call it that for now for ease of explanation. A lot came out of it, including letting go of a lot of the above-mentioned stresses in my life. Affirming to myself, do the things that I can control, and let go of the things I can't. In faith, God will bless my works and provide the things outside of my control, is the best way I could really sum it up. And although everybody will have their theories and opinions on the matter, as I mentioned above, I personally have seen and experienced the journey firsthand, and it's been quite a journey indeed. Things that were in my control gave me confidence and helped me to be more proactive and less introverted in my daily interactions with the world, and a lot more extroverted and outspoken in myself. Things that weren't in my control, the stresses of everyday life, the things that I was beating myself up with, were the first in prayer, and upon trusting in God and letting it go, out of mind and out of sight, it would just literally naturally work itself out in my favor. I can't actually begin to describe how impromptu everything was. That the moment I truly let it go, the moment that I removed the amount of stress from my heart, like just being like, okay, I can't control it, I'm done with it. It really seems a little too simple to actually be true, and it seems a little too simple or even good to be true. But nonetheless, it's true. It's like a state of mind over matter here that you remove what you can't control, and you're left now with the things that you can control, and your stress is just melt away. So my stress was heavily reduced. Things in and out of itself, and my physical condition has been vastly improved as a result. So now, in conclusion, because there's not really much more that I can add to this, I am now 30 years old, and the last episode of ITP has come and gone. Nearly 2 years of remission at this point in time, and a daughter to keep me occupied for the next 18 plus years of my life. And yeah, that's going to be quite the stress. Boy. And finding, I think the right word would be solace. Solace? Maybe. Let's just use that for now, for ease and description. But finding solace in my faith in the way that changed my whole demeanor and fiber of being and my outlook on life. I know that should another episode occur, I will be more than ready to take the challenges it presents. And I will continue to advocate for these things who are affected and as it has affected me. I'm glad to be able to share this information and the story with all of you. Sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, I really hope that this gives both insight to this increasingly common blood condition, and that's not even an exaggeration. And I hope it sparks hope for everyone going through the toughness in their own personal battles, to anybody who might be suffering this. So with that, I pretty much finished. Thank you for the time of listening.